Now 48 hours from an answer, 12,500 votes, less than 0.2% separate these two candidates, Rick Scott and Democrat Bill Nelson. With Arizona now in the loss column for the GOP, the president has turned his focus to the Sunshine State, tweeting, "When will Bill Nelson concede in Florida? The characters running Broward and Palm Beach voting will not be able to find, in quotes, enough votes. Too much spotlight on them now." But Nelson is not backing down, and Senator Chuck Schumer is providing backup.
He's been using his power as governor to try to undermine the voting process. He's tried to get the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to intimidate local supervisors of election.
Trump and Scott are attempting to bully the election officials in Florida out of doing their jobs in an attempt to win this election. It's just plain wrong. It's un-American.
So Phil Keating, live on the ground there where all the action is in Lauderhill, Florida tonight. Hi, Phil.
Hi, Martha. It turns out Florida's deadline, recount deadline of Thursday afternoon, 3 p.m., may not be so firm of a deadline after all. This afternoon, Democratic Senator Bill Nelson, who trails Governor Scott by 12,000 votes, filed a new lawsuit hoping to void the deadline for any of the 67 counties in the state which cannot and failed to complete their machine recounts by Thursday afternoon, saying every legal vote cast must be counted, deadline or not. Looking live tonight inside the Broward County recount operation. Significant news and progress today. All 300,000 early votes have now been recounted. Workers are now getting to the mail-in ballots and the Election Day votes. An official says Broward is now ahead of schedule and likely to make the deadline. One of the races being recounted in Palm Beach County is the State House race. There, Republican Mike Caruso leads Democrat Jim Bonfiglio by 37 votes. That's in recount territory. Well, a Leon County judge, a Democrat today, ruled for Bonfiglio, giving Palm Beach County an extra 5 days to complete all of their recount races. Expect that ruling to immediately be challenged, either for a stay or appealing it up to federal court, likely by the Republicans. The elections chief in Broward County, Brenda Snipes, long criticized for being incompetent and by some corrupt, indicated today perhaps she will step aside after this. Jeb Bush tweeted that the time has come. She should resign after the recount, saying public confidence in the elections process is suffering. As governor, by the way, Bush appointed Snipes to the position. Miami-Dade County, which has the most ballots to recount, is far ahead of Broward at this point, and making the Thursday deadline will happen. That's because, unlike Broward, Miami-Dade started preparing and sorting ballots last week, back when it looked imminent that a recount order would come on Saturday, and began processing their ballots Saturday night, hours later, 15 hours before Broward. Senator Nelson appeared today in Washington with Minority Leader Chuck Schumer.
We will not have a rerun of 2000, when bullying and intimidation ruled and created a rush to judgment, so that to this day, many Americans believe that election was unfairly decided. That cannot happen again.
And the next court hearings in the Florida recount battle happen tomorrow. One is to force the governor to recuse himself from the entire recount operation, since he is not only the acting governor of the state, but his future is involved in the outcome. Well, either he wins or his political life is over. The other seeks to allow all provisional ballots where the signatures on the ballot do not perfectly match the signature on file in the county not be tossed out, but instead still be counted. They say that is unconstitutional, and they should be counted after all. So still a lot of action to happen in the courts around the state. And meanwhile, in South Florida in particular, with most of the population in these three counties, the recounting continues around the clock. Martha?
Phil, thank you very much. Right in the thick of it there. Here now, Florida GOP Chairman Blaise Ingoglia, who joins us exclusively tonight, and Kendall Coffey, lead attorney for the Gore campaign during the 2000 Florida recount. Gentlemen, welcome. Good to have both of you with us tonight. You heard Chuck Schumer, Senator Schumer, and this for Kendall Coffey, saying that we're not going to have a rerun of 2000 when bullying and intimidation ruled and created a rush to judgment, so that to this day Americans believe that the election was unfairly decided. Is he trying to suggest, Mr. Coffey, that that's what we're going to see again here, and that Floridians can't trust this outcome?
Well, I think Floridians can trust the processes. We learned a lot since 2000, and there is a fair issue about whether more time is needed. Wouldn't we agree that voters in Palm Beach County shouldn't somehow lose a right to a manual recount simply because their election officials don't get it done on time? That kind of equal protection challenge, standards need to be the same from county to county, was actually the legal strategy that Republican lawyers successfully used back in 2000 when it was argued successfully that different standards in manual recounts in Florida made the process unconstitutional. That part of it, I think, is a fair point the Democrats are raising. But otherwise, let's give the system a chance, because I do think the election officials are working tirelessly to get this done on time and to get it done right. And if they need a little bit more time, let's give it to them. Let's make sure this time Florida has the right count.
But it's interesting, you know, in Phil Keating's reporting that we just heard, Blaise, he talked about the fact that other counties, as soon as they thought that a recount was a possibility, kicked in and started their process right away, started sorting everything. But Broward County didn't do that. So why were they dragging their feet? And if that's the case, you know, why do we keep giving them concessions?
That's a great question.
Well,
I'll come to you in a minute, Kendall. I just wanted, that question was for Blaise, and then I'll give you a chance to respond.
Thanks, Martha.
That's a great question, and the supervisor in Broward will be the only one who can answer that. But we've had problems with Supervisor Snipes, not just this election, but for previous elections also. Look at Miami-Dade, and Phil Keating had alluded to this. Miami-Dade has a lot more voters. They had a lot longer ballot, but they were still able to do what they needed to do because they did it in advance. They were thoughtful. They knew that this was coming. Unfortunately, you have the supervisors in Palm Beach and Broward County just basically starting the process late. They're going home early. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And unfortunately, this is the situation we're in right now.
So go ahead, Kendall Coffey. I said I'd give you the chance to respond to that. Go ahead.
Well, I mostly agree with that. But the real question here isn't a report card for election supervisors. It's who are the real parties in interest. It's the voters. So if voters in Palm Beach County tried to vote, made markings on their paper ballot that are legally sufficient, should a supervisor's whatever reasons be something that denies the voter a right to have their vote, ballot vote counted?
Yeah, but, you know, I mean, I did my ballot at home, right? And there's all these instructions on it. You have to be really careful when you're filling it out. You have to fold it. You got to do everything perfectly, and you got to make sure that it's in on time. So this question of voter intent, which has been raised, and Mark Elias said, you know, we have sued Florida in federal court to ensure that its guidelines for determining, quote, voter intent do not disenfranchise thousands of lawful ballots. Blaise Ingoglia, your thoughts and your interpretation on what is meant by voter intent.
Well, actually, I'm going to diverge off of that. I think what's more important than voter intent is what the Democrats are doing when they filed a lawsuit the past couple of days, asking for all of the vote-by-mail ballots to be accepted after the Tuesday deadline. You know, we have a law in Florida that says that you cannot cast a ballot. A ballot cannot count if it's received by the supervisor of elections after 7 p.m. on Election Day. But the Democrats have now filed a lawsuit saying that they should accept them if they're received up to 10 days after Election Day. So while we are struggling with the voter intent, we have to deal with that lawsuit. I think one of the bigger issues from our perspective is that the Democrats clearly are trying to steal this election. Now they're trying to change the law after an election to try to get the outcome they want because they did not like the results on Election Day.
Real quick, if you can, Kendall Coffey, you know, I mean, it's a valid question. If the law is that it has to be in by election night, you can't change the law after the fact. You can maybe change it next time around.
Look, there was a lot of litigation on both sides last time. There's a lot of litigation this time. But the real parties in interest, the people who matter here, are the voters. And their voters' intent, if it's a valid ballot, ought to be heard. And in fact, the supervisor of elections, which have been, or the division of elections, which has been Republican dominated for the last 20 years, has put out pretty specific guidance on how to judge the markings in a manual recount. And it allows people to be imperfect, to write the word yes by a candidate's name instead of filling out the oval, or to circle a candidate's name rather than doing everything perfectly. That's what we've got to get to.
All right. Kendall Coffey, thank you very much. Blazing Golia, good to have you with us tonight, gentlemen. We'll see where it goes. Thank you.